even speaking with folks in country. At least I've met obviously people outside the country. So thanks so much for having me. I'm going to share a talk with you. I'm going to talk for about 30 minutes or so, and then we'll open it up for discussion, for Q&A. And the talk is interesting because it's a talk that is about agility, and it's about customer centricity, which is at the heart of being agile. But it has a lot of warnings in there, kind of about what could happen if we don't pay attention to what we're doing. If we sort of blindly follow the methods and the processes and the ideas, you can end up getting yourself into a little bit, and sometimes a lot, of trouble, or at least situations that are challenging ethically, at least. So let me share my stories with you, and then, like I said, when this is over, when I'm done speaking, we can have a discussion about this, or really anything else that you'd like to speak about. So I'm going to just share my screen with you and just get the presentation up. So about 20 years ago, I started my career, and I started my career working on software that looked like this when it was shipped. It was shipped on CDs. This is how it was delivered. This is how it was consumed. And at the time, right, when software is consumed, when it's delivered on static medium, learning loops are long back then. It took a long time. We worked for 6 months at a time to generate any kind of output, at least. And then we would print 15 million copies of each one of those America Online CDs, and we would send them to people in the United States, in France, in Germany, in England, and then we would wait to see how they would use the software. The feedback loop was at least 6 to 12 months long. Software adoption was slow. If you think about it, 20 years ago, the pace of adoption was slow. Whether somebody would actually install your software was never guaranteed, right? Just because you sent them a CD doesn't mean that that's what they would do. And so it took a long time for software to be adopted and for people to start using it on a mass scale. The impact of the software that we were making 20 years ago was largely limited to people who were tech savvy, people who could afford computers, people who had access to computers, people who had access to connectivity. And so the impact that the software was making was limited to those individuals specifically. When we were shipping software on CDs, the goal for the software was works as designed. In other words, we designed it a certain way. There was a specification document. It was this thick every single time. And the goal was to make sure that whatever went on the CD matched whatever it said in that thick document. And our measure of success by at that point was shipping software. That was it. Did we ship the software? Yes, terrific. We had a party. I got a t-shirt with the name of the project on the t-shirt. And then we'd work for another 6 to 12 months and then ship more CDs and have another party and get another t-shirt. And I have a lot of t-shirts with the names of projects on them over the years. But that was 20 years ago. In the last 20 years, software has completely eaten the world. Everything that we use today has some aspect of software in it. Obviously, our phones have software in it. Our coffee machines have software in it. Really, everything has software in it. In fact, people are taking this a bit too far in some instances. This is a device called the Smalt, and it is the world's first internet-connected salt shaker. So that holds salt in it, and apparently it also has software in it. So this is a real thing that exists. And what's interesting about software consuming the world is how we make software has fundamentally changed as well. This idea of working for 6 months in a very serial process and then shipping it and hoping that it works has fundamentally changed. We have DevOps now. DevOps, which allows us to build software in a continuous way, not in a static way. The ability to get ideas, to get our bits out into the hands of our consumers as quickly as we want and as continuously as we want. And what this has done is it's fundamentally changed how we think about developing software, how we think about servicing our customers, and how we think about delivering value from our customers. Mahmoud, I think we're getting Zoom bombed here, my friend. You might want to kick that guy out there in the middle. I don't know if you can see it, but I can see it.
Actually, you are a kick co-host, so you can kick wherever you would like.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm going to remove this person if you don't mind.
Yeah, I did.
That was my first Zoom bomb. I feel so good. That was my first one. It was full on. That's fantastic. Great. Well, never a dull moment, I guess. So we've got a new way to develop software. It means the way that we think about the work that we do is fundamentally different. Like this quote on the screen says here, from the executive chairman of BBVA. BBVA is a big Spanish bank. And he says, look, we're competing in a race that has no finish line or predetermined route. What we're building are systems. We're not sending CDs anymore. We're building software systems that we can continuously improve and make better. And there's proof of that across every industry. For example, the car industry. The car industry is really easy to pick on because for 100 years, they have trained us to believe that the only way that we can update our cars, the only way that we can get new features in our cars is to buy the next model year, to buy next year's car, the 2020 model, the 2021. It's the only way you can get your car to do new things. And we took that same model and we applied it to software, right? We had Windows 95, Windows 98, Windows 2000, right? And this was the only way to update your software for a while. But then some folks who understood this modern nature of technology started building cars. And all of a sudden, your car can do new things simply by sitting outside your house in your driveway overnight. You wake up in the morning, the car can drive itself, it can park itself, and can do new things because we're continuously updating the software. And in fact, it's the systems that support the cars as well that can be continuously updated. This article here in the middle is about how Tesla went from a tweet to a shipped feature in 6 days. So this guy, Loic, tweets right at Elon Musk, and he says, listen, every time I go charge my Tesla in San Mateo in California, there are other people, it's not the word that he uses, but I'll use the word other people, who leave their Tesla for hours, and even if they're already charged and they've walked away. Elon Musk is a pretty busy guy, but he tweets back right away, and he says, listen, you're right. I'm going to fix this. I'm on it. Don't worry about it. 6 days later, Tesla updates the software for the superchargers in the United States. For every minute that you remain connected to the charger after your car is full, costs you money, right? And they're able to react in 6 days because they think like a software company. The BMWs and the Mercedes and the Fords and the General Motors of the world, they could never react like that because they don't think like a software company. And again, it's pretty amazing what they can do. This is my friend Adam. My friend Adam has a Tesla in the United States, and he texts me all these things. He said, listen, I woke up this morning and I got 5% more power in my car through a software update, right? The app told him, the car's got an app, and he got 5% more power for doing nothing, for waking up, like continuously delivering value, right? One of the core principles of Agile and agility, right? And that's the world we live in. Now, with this amazing capability of continuous software comes tremendous opportunity, right? We've got the ability to create a continuous conversation with the customers that we serve. We can ship ideas into market quickly, small things. We can very quickly sense or measure how it affects their behavior. And we can then decide what we're going to do about that. We can actually respond. So we ship, we sense, and we respond. And our goal as modern software development organizations is to get through this loop as fast as possible. Because every time that you work your way through this feedback loop, that's what this is, you learn something and you adjust course and you make your product better. And if you start to find out, to sense that what you've put into market is a bad idea, the faster you can get around this loop, the faster you can find that out and move off of that bad idea, the less you've invested in that idea. So our goal is to get through this loop in days or even hours if you can do it. And it moves us away from a culture where we think like a software factory, right? Our goal is not to think of ourselves as a software factory, because producing output is not the measure of success anymore, right? Writing more code does not necessarily equal more value. Our goal is to change customer behavior. That's the new measure of success, right? Because if you think about it, if you produce more and more code like a factory, you end up with software products that look a lot like this, right? And we end up with software products that look like this because we can build it. And just because we can build it doesn't mean that we should build it. And so if producing software is not the measure of success anymore, what is? The measure of success is outcomes, measurable changes in the behavior of our users. What will people be doing differently if we make them more successful? Outcomes tell us when we've delivered customer value, because we see consumer behavior change with the new software we put into their hands. And outcomes tell us when we're done, when we've maximized the behavior in a particular path. Let me share with you a quick case study. Gibson Guitars, one of the legendary guitar companies in the world, it's been around 100 years, is bankrupt. They're out of business, and that's very, very sad for many, many guitar players in the world. Guitar sales were plummeting, and Gibson didn't know what to do about it. So they brought in a CEO, a new CEO, who was an advocate for innovation. And he was obsessed with innovation. He kept putting out new shiny products and new types of guitars, and anything that was innovative he thought would save the company. And what he didn't pay attention to was what was actually happening with his target audience, with his marketplace. The target audience for guitar buyers has changed dramatically. So yes, the number of people buying guitars has declined, but who was buying guitars has fundamentally changed. It turns out that these days, over half of new guitar buyers are women. And the CEO of Gibson Guitars didn't recognize that. And in fact, if you go to the Gibson website, it looks like this. They continue to celebrate the technology and the guitar heroes of old. So this doesn't appeal to the target audience. They're not shipping anything of value to their new target audience, these women guitar buyers. Conversely, Fender Guitars, a direct competitor of Gibson, is thriving. This is what Fender's website looks like. They understand their target audience. They build products that match the needs of their target audience, and they teach those new guitar buyers how to play guitar. They offer them online lessons. They offer them instruments that are easier for them to play. And in turn, they are thriving. They understand their target audience. They understand that changing the measure of success is key. Changing the measure of behavior is key for them to continue to stay in business in tough economic times for guitar sales. Now, here's the challenge when you start to think about customers. The problem is that we can't predict behavior. It's easy to think about features and output because we can make that stuff. And it's easy to believe that we know what our users will do with the things that we give to them. For example, this is an intersection in Massachusetts in the United States. Now, somebody's job, and you can see, if you look closely at the picture, you can see that painted on the road, there is a right turn arrow there. You'll also notice that the cars in the photo are turning left, right? And so you're in charge of getting people to start turning right at this intersection, and you're in charge of getting them to stop. Now, how do you do that? Well, it seems like the answer would be pretty obvious, right? You put up a stop sign and you put up a no left turn sign, and that should get people to stop, right? Except it didn't work that way. The feature makes sense, right? The feature's it works as designed, it's delivered on time, but the customer isn't doing what we expected them to do. And with any feature that we put out into the marketplace, there's a good chance that we're wrong, right? So if we think about this in kind of software language, the stop sign is the output. It's the thing that we make. The outcome we want is people to stop and turn right, not keep going and turn left, right? That's the behavior change. That's the real measure of success. Now, as we build our software systems, and you know this, they're complex and unpredictable. And the things that our customers and our users want to do, they will do no matter what obstacles we put in their way, right? Humans are complex and unpredictable as well, and they are equally as stubborn. And so even if we put things in their way, they will still do what they want to do despite the interfaces you build for them. And even if we figure out our users' behavior, it's never static. It evolves and it continues to change as our systems change and as the world around us change, right? These new behaviors emerge through the use of the systems that we build. So we have to stay on top of our customers. We have to pay attention to that, right? I'll give you another example. This is Instagram, right? Instagram is a place where people go and they post that one perfect picture of the day. And this is particularly true of teenage girls. And there's a lot of pressure to post that perfect photo of the day. So if you look at this photo, right, this girl went to the beach, someone took this photo, she crops out the part of just her at the beach, and that guy on the left there in his shorts, right, he doesn't make it onto Instagram. And there's a lot of pressure there. And one thing that Instagram didn't predict is what behaviors that pressure would drive in this particular population. Well, it turns out that teenage girls have started to create this thing called Finsta. Finsta stands for fake Instagram. And they're private closed accounts, primarily made up of teenage girls, where they can do stuff like this. They can take a silly photo, they can draw on it because no one sees it. And it relieves the pressure of posting publicly that one perfect picture of the day, right? And getting as many likes. Instagram watched this behavior emerge from the use of their system. They never expected it. They watched it emerge outside of their system with Snapchat, with these stories that disappeared. They brought it in-house, they built Instagram stories, and they continued to evolve it to have it meet the needs of their changing target population, target market, and their changing needs, right? So we're always on top of our customers, always paying attention, always shipping, sensing, and responding to ensure that our customers have the best user experience. And we can use this ability to learn continuously, right? We put stuff in the market, we get feedback, we learn, we give back to make our users more successful. Here's another interesting case study, right? This is CityMapper. Sorry, I blanked on the name there. CityMapper. CityMapper is a London-based navigation app for cities around the world for everything except driving. So walking, biking, public transportation. CityMapper is awesome. I actually really love this app. And the outcome that they're trying to achieve is that people arrive at their destinations faster and more consistently. Now, what's interesting is that through watching the behavior in their app, in their home city of London, they recognized that there was a part of London that wasn't being served by public transportation or public bicycles or any kind of ride-sharing networks. And so they saw an opportunity to start to build an adjacent business, and they launched a bus service adjacent to their mapping application that serviced this route in London that wasn't accessible. And they branded the buses with their own branding. They built the UI inside the bus. They built the UI for the drivers. And by sensing, responding, and learning, they continued to improve the outcomes for their users in London. Now, this is all well and good, right? But sometimes what seems trivial, the updates that we make in our applications, end up creating unintended consequences, negative real-world consequences, right? So Twitter joins the world at roughly 2005, 2006. In 2007, one of the users of Twitter proposes the hashtag, which is great. 2009, Twitter starts supporting the hashtag. It emerges from the use of the system, right? And all the things that we know and love about Twitter came from emerging from the use of the system. Retweets, replies, all of those things. But all of a sudden, people started using Twitter in ways that the founders of that service never imagined. And that started to get Twitter up in front of governing bodies. Hey, you're impacting elections, you're impacting politics, you're causing people harm. People are being doxxed and harassed in certain places, and you can see that the creators of Twitter are responding to this, and they're trying to figure it out. But they admit, like this is Jack Dorsey. He says, "Look, we didn't fully predict or understand the real world negative consequences that Twitter could cause, right? We put a feature out into the marketplace. We expected a certain kind of behavior, but customers did something completely different. And so now, they've spent most of their efforts removing the bad content instead of building a framework that encourages good behavior, right? How do we change the system to encourage good behavior? And so now they're working on doing that, right? We're going to build to learn fast and improve that. And then Twitter gave him the response that he kind of deserved for that, which is what Twitter does best, right? This is the kind of system that he built. He should feel it like that. And so as we think about the outcomes that we're trying to achieve with our products and services, as we consider the unpredictable nature of humans, the people that we're building it for, we have to be cautious. Because if we start to optimize our work for outcomes and we start to blindly optimize for metrics without considering the real world implications of optimizing for those metrics, we are working at best in a risky way, and at worst, and I'll show you some examples, in potentially criminal ways as well. Let me show you what I mean by this, okay? So in the name of engagement, right? We talk about engagement, especially if you're building any kind of app that has broader appeal. In the name of engagement, right? The big daddy in the room is Facebook. And Facebook has gifted us the metrics of MAU and DAU, monthly active users and daily active users. And anything we can do to engage people on a daily and monthly basis is good, right? Everything is focused on getting our users engaged on a daily basis. So you can imagine that Facebook didn't really mind that the users of Myanmar, where Facebook literally is the internet, everybody in Myanmar uses the internet. Facebook didn't mind that they'd created an enabling environment for the proliferation of violence against the Rohingya minorities in Myanmar. People were engaging every day to point out where these people were so they could go get them, and they may have actually helped a genocide take place. Facebook may have helped genocide happen in Myanmar, and they didn't see this necessarily initially as a bad thing because, hey, engagement in Facebook in Myanmar was really high. So why not continue to feed people the content that's engaging them in that way, right? And this continues to be Facebook's policy, which is really it's enraging in many ways. It's really maddening, right? Facebook announced earlier this year or late last year that they'll permit speech from politicians that violates community standards. In other words, they're going to allow politicians to lie on the platform because that drives engagement. People like that. They click on it, they share it, and it feeds their belief systems, right? And so as the makers of these software products, we have to start to consider whether or not we want to enable this kind of behavior. YouTube is another one, right? You take one step into one type of YouTube video, you get 50 more right away. Well, it turns out that what YouTube is particularly good at, it turns out, is radicalizing young people. They go down the path, particularly in the United States, they'll go down the path of one video that talks about some negative content, and all of a sudden they've got 50 more videos of that, and YouTube is happy because they're consuming more and more videos, right? But particularly in the United States, we've got a radicalization going on in white supremacy and other types of violent behavior, and YouTube is at fault here because, again, you go down one rabbit hole and they just keep feeding you more and more and more, right? In the name of engagement. In the name of sales, right? If we're optimizing for sales, you can cause relationship stress. You can stress out families. This story came out a couple of years ago where Target, the American department store, was so good at analyzing purchase patterns that they could tell when a woman was pregnant. And they captured all that data, and someone wrote the code to capture and analyze all that data. and then to start to market pregnancy products to the person that they've identified as being pregnant. Well, it turns out in this particular case, they began to market pregnancy products to a teenage girl because of what she was shopping for on Target.com. Her family didn't know that she was pregnant. She was in high school. And the advertisements from Target informed the family that she was pregnant. She didn't tell them, Target did. That caused a lot of stress for that particular family, as you might imagine, right? Someone wrote that code, someone optimized for those outcomes, and someone didn't think about the negative real world consequences, right? They just shipped, sensed, and responded, and they said, hey, we keep doing this, people keep buying pregnancy products. In the name of efficiency, we build algorithms and tools to help us be more productive and more efficient. We can actually discriminate without even thinking about it. Amazon's hiring AI algorithm weeded out women's resumes because it was written by men. It weeded out, it downgraded resumes. So Amazon gets thousands and thousands of resumes every day, CVs. And there's no way that humans can go through that on a daily basis. So they built an algorithm to go through it. Well, the algorithm penalized words in the resume such as women's or women's chess club, and it downgraded resumes that had all women's colleges, so universities where only women attend. It downgraded those, right? Someone wrote that code, someone optimized that efficiency, and someone didn't think about the real world negative consequences. They just thought that they were creating great software, right? And again, this continues to happen. Someone built an AI used in job interviews in the UK to find the best applicants. Now, the algorithm selects the best applicant from a video that you record and compares it to 25,000 pieces of facial information from people who have done that job before and have done a good job, right? But inevitably, the people who wrote these algorithms have a built-in bias. And if we don't check on that, it's going to start to weed out qualified candidates based on the bias of the people who created that particular software, right? In the name of convenience, right? Making our lives easier, making it easier to manage our homes, easier to kind of do the things that we need to do in our busy lives. The edge cases can be used to hurt people, right? So home automation sounds amazing, right? I can control the locks on my door from my phone, the lights, the air conditioning, the heat, whatever else in my house, right? But what happens when couples break up? Well, it turns out that if you've got home automation systems in your house and you break up, some ex-couples have used it to abuse each other, right? Harassment, monitoring, like turning the air conditioning way up, or making it dark, or locking the door, locking people out of their house, right? No one thought about these negative real world consequences. They optimized only for the happy path, right? And didn't think about the outcomes that would happen as the scale of the product grew. Remember, these behaviors emerged from the use of the product. And if you don't continue to sense and respond, you start to miss this stuff and you start to create these very negative environments. And then lastly, of course, in the name of news and readership and consumption, it can really elevate the worst in us and really bring a lot of attention to people who should not be getting a lot of attention, right? And we like to pick on social media or retail, but most industries are using software to change the behavior of their users, right? This is a thing that most industries are doing, and they're moving through this, right? And so as you work your way through this, as you optimize for these behaviors, one of the things that you should be consistently asking yourselves as makers of software is, am I solving user needs or am I exploiting those user needs? Because both of those things will make you money. And as makers of software products, we have to ask ourselves what business we want to be in, right? We want to understand our customers. We want to get a sense of what makes them successful. We want to get a sense of what they want. But at some point, you will have the opportunity to exploit those needs, right? And the question is, what will you do? You have the power to make that decision and to move that forward. Now, look, the reality is this. It's a leadership issue in a lot of these companies, right? The leaders of these organizations that I showed you today, Facebook and Twitter for the most part, and other organizations, they just don't care because that's not what they're incentivized to do, right? They're incentivized by venture capitalists and the stock market to drive engagement and reach. They're not incentivized for positive impact. They're not incentivized for protecting subsets of users from harm. They're rewarded for keeping costs down and for driving up engagement, right? And again, like this is a bit of a tongue-in-cheek thing, but this is what drives a lot of these systems, right? Fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate, hate leads to user engagement. And as the producers, the product managers, the designers, the engineers of these services, we've got the opportunity to make this better. Now, look, something to keep an eye on, okay? I do a lot of work with a lot of different companies, and I hear this statement a lot. I trust my product manager. So if you're an engineer, if you're a designer, you know, an architect, a QA, and whatever it is that you do, right? And you say, look, I trust my product manager. That's great. That's good. But these issues you have control over, right? I hear this too, right? Hey, I just want to write code, right? That's what I showed up to do, right? That's great. You will hear this one a lot as well, but you don't have the luxury of doing that anymore. You have to consider how your code will be used, what program it fits into, and what is the strategic goal of the company that you're supporting. Because again, are you going to solve user needs? Or are you going to exploit them? And the thing that you should always remember is that these new technologies by default are going to have your ethical fingerprints on them. So if you're the makers of this software, your ethical fingerprints are going to be in the code. They're going to be in the design and in the requirements, not of a broader society. So you wield tremendous power, right? And the question you want to ask yourself every single time you make something, every time you ship, sense, respond, continuously improve, is what is this code going to be used for? What will it be used to do? Right? You have to take an interest in the strategic implications of the work that you're doing, because if you don't, it's going to be you who pays the price. This is a guy named James Liang. He's a software engineer, and I'm sure he was a very good Agile software engineer. But he wrote the code for Volkswagen that cheated the diesel emission sensors, the big Volkswagen scandal that happened a couple of years ago, right? He's in jail. He got a 4-year jail sentence for doing that. The CEO of Volkswagen still has his job, still gets his paycheck, still gets his bonus. The engineer is who's in jail. We have the power to choose this. And as we think about how to optimize for outcomes and how to make our customers successful and how to continuously improve and inspect and adapt, think about these words from Kim Goodwin, who's a friend of mine, an excellent designer and a product manager and a leader. She says, look, all of our work should be goal-driven and values-guided, and we should measure both. The goals are the outcomes, the metrics that we're targeting. The values are the things that we are not willing to sacrifice to get there. And we should articulate both of those things at the beginning of every initiative and measure both along the way and raise our hand if we start to violate some of these values that we've laid out there. And so I'll wrap up with this. Look, what can you do as an individual? There's a few things that you can do right away. First and foremost, regardless of what role you have in the organization, you have to understand your business model. How does your company make money? Right? That's absolutely key. And how does the work that you do fit into that revenue generation? Okay. You have to take an interest in your customers. You have to get to know them. You have to understand what their motivations are, what makes them successful, and where there are potentials to harm them. You have to really get a sense of where those edges are. The code that you write, the code that you ship, the products that you serve to these customers can be used to learn. Do that. Build those feedback loops. Do continuous deployment, continuous integration, continuous learning and improvement, and learn and make things better. Measure the impact of your work. So we put this thing out there. How did customer behavior change? For the better, for worse? What are they doing now? What are we seeing across the system? And as a team, sit down together and discuss the dangerous edge cases. Have a brainstorming session where you go through all the bad things that somebody could do with your product. or your system or your software, right? Like Zoom bombing, for example, right? Probably no one ever imagined that, my guess is, at Zoom. And yet here we are, right? Today in 2020, getting Zoom bombed. And then lastly, and most importantly, and this was a tough one because not all of us have the luxury to get up and walk away from our jobs, but you can refuse the work that harms people. You can organize together, raise your hand, say, look, I'm not going to do this because it's going to harm our customers, not make them more successful. And we've seen this time and time again, even at Google, right? 22,000 employees walked out across the world one day to protest the treatment of women at the company, right? So if you can do that, you can start to refuse the work and the way that it's being done. Look, the bottom line is this. There's always a good quote from Jurassic Park for any talk, but this is from Jurassic Park, right? It says, your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they could do something that they didn't stop to think if they should. And I hope, if nothing else, this talk and this meetup that we're doing tonight gives you some pause the next time you're sitting at work and thinking about, should we be doing this? Not can we do it, but should we be doing this? And after that, I just want to say thank you so much for listening and having me. I'm happy to take questions. I've got a new book coming out, excuse me, in the next 6 weeks or so. And if you're interested in learning more, you can go to foreveremployable.com and learn more there. And so with that, I'll stop the share, go back to full screen, and I'm happy to take your questions about anything I talked about, or really anything at all.
Thank you, Jeff. I'm currently have the option for muting everybody. So if people can just share their chatting through chatting window,
that's fine with me.
Or I can unmute all. So
feel free to put the questions in the chat.
I'm currently allowing anyone to have a question to unmute himself and say it out loud. So now you can unmute yourself. Please go ahead.
What questions do you have for me? Type them or ask.
Hi, Jeff. How are you doing?
I'm doing great.
Yeah. Thanks for the presentation. It's very good. Yeah. Actually, I have a question about how early should a product start having this metrics from the market? I mean, if it's a very early product, maybe what we are sensing is still sometimes it's false positive or a false negative.
Yeah.
How can we differentiate or not sensing too much and responding like if we were on the right track, but we have to be more patient, you know?
So a couple thoughts on that. So first of all, setting out, right? As soon as you set out, you should have a good sense of what it is that you'd like to see as measures of success. So even if it's a brand new product, you should have a sense of what success means to you, right? So how will we know that this is getting traction, that people like this, that we're solving a real problem for them? That's very, very important. When you start to build the sense and respond loop into your ways of working, in the early days of your product, a lot of that data is going to be qualitative. And so you might feel tempted to dismiss it. Like you said, hey, it's a false positive or a false negative. We didn't talk to enough people. We didn't talk to the right people. And I think that's okay initially if you want to kind of come back and test it again or test it a different way. But at some point, you know, getting in there and really getting a sense of why you're getting that negative feedback is important. And that usually comes from talking to customers. So if you feel like you got a false positive or a false negative, then I would recommend that you go and have conversations with the people who tried your product and say, look, it seems that you're not interested in this particular idea. Can you give us a sense why, or what are you doing today to solve this problem? Or tell me about the last time that you've solved this. And that should give you a sense of how true or false your results are. You really can't get to, you can't really get to quantitative data until you've got something to show people at scale, right? You got to have some bit of software. And I think it's extremely risky, especially with new ideas, to just flat out build software. I think you're spending too much and you're risking too much. And when you spend more on an idea, even if the feedback ends up negative, there is a feeling that is, well, we already spent the money, so we might as well finish the feature, finish the build. So start small, test small, talk to your customers, and usually that early feedback is a pretty good indication that you've got to, at the very least, adjust your thinking and potentially move on to something potentially more successful. Does that help?
Oh, yeah, thank you.
My pleasure.
So anybody else have a question?
Yeah, I think Jeff, hi, it's Mariam. Hi there. Hi. I actually am working as a Scrum Master. So I work closely with the product owner, but in the field of product development, we develop cloud solutions. So I was wondering, how can the Scrum Master be involved in such process? I mean, is it the responsibility of the product owner to do what you're saying, or it's the responsibility of the Scrum Master? And in what way can the Scrum Master do an impact to have this continuous process?
That's a really good question. This is everybody's responsibility. And I think that I think as a Scrum Master, it's something you could bring up on a daily basis, right? Because you're sort of kind of running the team. But those two things I showed at the end there, right? I trust my product manager. I just want to write code. I can't tell you. I mean, I've worked in all over the world. I've worked with all kinds of teams and all kinds of situations, and I hear it all the time, right? And I get it, right? If you're a software engineer, hey, listen, don't bother me with customers. Don't bother me with research. I just want to put my headphones on and write code. I get that. Sorry, you don't have that luxury anymore. So I think teams need leadership on this front from their Scrum Master, from their product owner, maybe even together, right? But this is everybody's responsibility, and everybody needs to recognize that this is a part of writing software today. I mean, we're just seeing it's really frustrating to see how poorly thought out so many of these systems are in a variety of ways. I showed you some pretty extreme cases, right? But there are cases that are maybe not as extreme, but still paralyzing to their target audience, right? And there's this belief still, which baffles me, that getting the software out is a victory, and it's not, right? In a continuous world, it's about making sure that your customers are successful and that you're respecting them and delighting them and providing them with the things that they ask for. So I think it's the entire team's responsibility. And I would guess that if you're not seeing that kind of leadership on your team, then a Scrum Master is a great person to start to drive this conversation in the team, right? To say, hey, listen, right, maybe we should get together for lunch tomorrow and really start to explore what kind of bad things people could do with our system. And let's make sure that we build in the guardrails that don't allow that to happen, right? Before it becomes a problem, right? And especially in situations like, imagine you're a Scrum Master, a product owner at Zoom 6 months ago, right? And somebody says, hey, you know what, let's do this brainstorming exercise. And during the brainstorming exercise, they'll say, well, some dude's going to join some public Zoom call and he's going to get naked on the call and run around in there. And your response, and mine too, would be, that's ridiculous. Who's going to do that? That's stupid, right? That's the kind of stuff we got to talk about before it becomes a phenomenon and makes the news, right? So we block that from happening, and then we never have to hear about it again. So I think Scrum Master is a great leader to drive this conversation.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Yep.
Jeff, I have a question. what you have mentioned regarding the Tesla update by responding through a Twitter user.
Yeah.
Don't you think that is this example? It's just like too fancy for large corporate to implement. You know the chain of commands and the how things are going. It might be in Tesla. It's a special thing because this is an Elon Musk, or it might be like stunt or something. Do you think that on the ground this is something that can we really implement?
So look, I think so here's Elon Musk is unique, okay, and in good ways and bad ways, right? I'm not necessarily praising him, but the nice thing about Elon Musk is that he is a tech CEO. I think he's only 2 or 3 years older than me, so I kind of feel like and he grew up in America like me, so I kind of feel like I've got some shared context there, right? And so for him to be more available and involved in the public discourse of his companies makes sense for him. For him to respond to that is an indication that the company is listening, right? So for example, if I was to tweet at the Bank of America CEO, you think he would respond to me? My guess is no, right? And the only way I get any response from Bank of America is I have to send them direct messages on Twitter, and then 3 days later I get some customer service person getting back to me, right? And so is it unique? Yes. Is it unnecessary? No, I don't think so. I think it at the macro level, right? That's Tesla sensing and responding, not just sensing data, but sensing customer sentiment, and then providing answers to that customer sentiment, in this case from the CEO. And again, I think if you look at other organizations, sort of digital first organizations, right? Instagram's leadership team generally participates in the public conversation about their products. I'm trying to think of other examples, but none come to mind immediately. But I don't know. I mean, is it unique and different? Yes. Is it a model that others should follow? I think so.
Perfect. Thank you. Do we have any other questions?
I will point out a couple things while you're thinking about your question. I put in the chat, if you want the slides that I showed you today, if you go to jeffgothelf.com/slides, you'll find a way to get the slides there. And then there's a link to the book stuff, which is foreveremployable.com, the new material. We didn't talk about that tonight. We don't have to talk about it tonight, but it's exciting for me. So if you have any questions about that. Here's a question.
We have a question from Ahmed Abul Khair. He said, what do you think is better, to address sense and respond during sprint planning, or should we have a separate event for it?
It's an ongoing activity. There's no way to separate this out as in sprint planning, you should plan on sensing and responding. In other words, this is an activity that you should plan for every time you plan the next sprint, right? So what are we, you know what? Let me reframe that. Actually, I'm going to rethink my answer, okay? I actually think that the sensing part informs sprint planning, and during sprint planning, you decide how you'll respond, right? So we bring the stuff that we've sensed into sprint planning, and then we decide on our response there and build it into the backlog for the next iteration. So I think that's how, but it happens in every iteration, right? This is not a thing that we don't do research once. We don't look at reports once. We don't measure analytics once. We don't talk to customers once. This is a thing that we continue to do on an ongoing basis. Now, there will be times in the product lifecycle where we do more of this and times when we do less of this. And that's okay, right? That's perfectly okay. That's the natural rhythm of software development. But every sprint planning should have evidence as part of the conversation to influence the backlog.
Okay.
Make sense?
Nice. Yeah. For me, I'm not sure about Ahmed, but for me, yes.
Okay.
Okay, he said sure. We have Nicholas.
QA and testers. Oh man. I'm gonna. So I'm gonna just tell you a story as an answer to that question, and hopefully my experience sharing will help answer that question. The teams that I have worked on that have had dedicated QA and dedicated testers have been the most successful when those QA and those testers have been full-time members and full-time participants of that Scrum team. They attended everything. They attended sprint planning. They attended all the brainstorming activities. They attended any design activities, any collaborative design activities that we did. If they could participate in some of the research, we would have them participate in some of that. And what we found was that this made them far more productive, far more successful, and far more aware of what quality meant, right? So the Q in QA stands for quality, right? And so what is quality? And again, and I've said this a few times and I'll say it again, quality is not works as designed, right? Quality is not we shipped it with 0 bugs, right? At least not alone, right? Quality is we shipped it, it works, and it solves a real problem for a real customer in a meaningful way. And the more that QA and QA engineers and testers can be involved in that creation process, the more they understand that definition of quality, the better their testing is. So they might come back and say, look, yeah, it works as we designed it, but nobody can use it. Or when they use it, we've kind of opened up this back door to abuse or whatever it is, right? So involve them in everything. That's the absolute key. Excellent. What's next? Oh, this is a good one too. I like this one. I'm going to read it. About goal-driven, values-guided, business always drives us to goal-driven. How to balance between both concepts. Fantastic question, right? A couple things here. The goals that our businesses typically drive us towards, and I'm going to generalize a little bit, so I don't like to speak in absolutes, but the majority of the companies that we work for drive us towards money, right? Revenue, right? That type of thing, right? And the outcomes that we talk about when in Sense and Respond and when we ship Sense and Respond are the behaviors that ultimately lead to revenue. But our goal is to really find the specific customer behaviors that end up getting people to spend money with us. Now, getting people to change their behavior requires values as the constraints, as the guardrails. Because if we don't have that, what you'll see is a lot of dark patterns sneak into the process. And so I think that as we start to identify our goals, we want to express the values that we want to hold up. And really, to be quite transparent, these are brand values, right? So if you think about the brand of your company, what does your brand stand for? And the way that you build your product or service is going to reflect that. I'll tell you another story. I used to work at a company in New York called The Ladders. Ladders is a job board, and it was a job board that was a subscription service. So job seekers paid to look for jobs, and employers paid to post jobs, and you had to pay every month. Now, the way that it worked was it was an auto-renew subscription. So you didn't have to agree to renew your subscription every month. It just renewed automatically. Okay, that's fine. You signed up for that. It was clear when you signed up. It says it there when you sign up, okay? Not an ideal pattern, but understandable. The unsubscribe, the turn off auto-renew checkbox was buried 4 or 5 layers in a settings menu somewhere where nobody could find it. Why did the CEO of the company decide to do that? Because the less people that find that, the more people pay him money on a monthly basis, right? We didn't have values declared. What were the brand values of the ladders? I worked there for 4 years. I don't know, right? So being very clear about what the brand stands for, what the company stands for, and then using that in these discussions to say, I know that hiding the unsubscribe box is going to generate more revenue, but that doesn't help us be customer centric. It doesn't help us be user friendly. It doesn't help us solve the problems of our customers. In fact, it might create more problems for them in the long run. So identify your brand values, write them down, make sure that you get them right and that people agree to them. And then every time you kind of bump up against one of them, point to them and say, listen, this is not what I signed up for.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Ayman. I have a question.
Sure.
Yeah. My question is during national holidays and team annual leaves, out of office in summer, how to avoid the expected decrease in average velocity? What we can do in order not to affect the set plan? Should we plan for slower velocity or faster velocity before the leaves?
Yeah, productivity is interesting, right? So, and velocity is interesting. We didn't really talk about velocity. I mean, look, inevitably it's going to happen, but so what, right? Remember, our goal is not the production of software. It's the driving of outcomes, right? The changing of the behavior of our customers. And so if our productivity is inevitably going to slow down, if the amount of work that we can do, let's make sure that the work that we do choose to put into our backlogs during these slowdowns reflects the work that will most impact customer behavior in a positive way. And that really should be true for every sprint. And so, again, remember that velocity as it's currently been adopted is velocity of production. It's that feature factory mindset in that model, because this mindset of we got to make more stuff, the more stuff we make, right, the more valuable the system is, which is not true. It's not necessarily true. And so as we think about slowdowns, think about the most valuable things that you can do impact customer behavior, and really use that as a theme throughout the year as well. So I don't think this is limited to national holidays and annual leaves.
We have a question about goal-driven. Did you see it from Muhammad Adel?
I answered that one.
You already answered this one? Okay, sorry.
It was a brilliant answer. So such a good answer.
Okay.
There's another one in here though. What do you think? I think I got this. Let me make sure. Oh, here we go. Do you recommend observing as a tool for sensing user behavior, or you got better tools to use? Observing is fantastic. If you can go see people do the thing that they do with your tool, it's nothing better. There's nothing more humbling. There's nothing more, you're just like, ugh, how can we have messed that up so bad? The more that you can observe your customers and just see them do the thing, it's so powerful. And if you can drag people if you can drag engineers with you, if you can drag your Scrum Master with you, if you can drag anybody with you, it's extremely, extremely powerful. So absolutely. And there's other tools. I wouldn't call them better. I think direct observation is one of the most powerful tools you can use. What do you think about the "you become what you measure" that Luke W. has been stating in his lately in his talks? He was talking about how websites for mobile are trying to get people to install their app, and other things that happened because they were following certain metrics. I don't know what Luke's been saying lately. I have to admit I haven't seen a thing from him in years, but maybe that's just by my choice. I don't know. I mean, sure. I mean, if you're measuring downloads and you're optimizing the system for downloads, then that's what you're going to work on, right? The ladders, again, is a good example of this. The ladders focused on acquisition. It was all about getting people into the top of the funnel, getting them into it. The product suffered because of that, because the majority of our effort was on acquisition marketing, and we were perceived as a marketing company, not as a product company. So I think it's a real risk, and you need to watch out for it. And again, really think through, what value are you providing and how not to overcompensate to one or the other. Would you say that the sense and respond approach should be a natural part of a DevOps mindset? Absolutely. DevOps enables sense and respond, right? It's the reason we can do it, right? You know, a lot of stuff is based on lean startup, right? Some of that thinking as well. You know, Eric Ries wasn't the first person to apply lean thinking to software development, right? Mary and Tom Poppendieck did it in the 80s. The problem in the 80s was the cycle time, right? The time it took to get feedback was long because we had reel-to-reel tapes and giant floppy disks. And gosh, you know, my folks had punch cards when I was a kid in the 70s, right? Today, because DevOps has enabled this continuous world for us, sensing and responding is how we build software. The fact that organizations choose to ignore that aspect of it is at their own risk, but DevOps enables sense and respond. So absolutely key to all of this. What else?
Yeah, we have a question from what can be done in the case of the customer may be hiding their real intention of using the software?
I'm sorry, can you ask that again? I'm sorry.
What can be done in the case of the customers may be hiding the real intention of using the software?
Talk to them.
Oh, really? Okay. Because it showed me that's a new one. So.
No, I mean, look, I mean, it's a cheeky answer, but it's the right answer, right? The customers will do what they need to do to solve their problem, right? So whatever it is they're trying to achieve. And if your software, if they use your software and it doesn't do exactly what they need, they'll hack it. They'll figure a way around it, or they'll use it for something it was never meant to do, right? The best question that you can ask your users is, tell me about the last time that you did the thing that we help you with, right? Tell me about the last time you bought shoes online. Tell me about the last time you applied for a mortgage online. Tell me about the last time you created a document and shared it with your friends using our software. And then just listen. Listen to them tell you that story. And if you ask 3, 4, 5 customers of yours that same question, the true intentions and the challenges come up very, very quickly in those conversations, right? So they'll say, well, really, look, what I'm really trying to do is I'm just trying to share some stuff with my family members, but not all of them are tech savvy. So I create it on your tool, and then I print out screens. Oh, you do? Why do you print it out, right? You start to kind of hear those stories. So to me, talking to customers is the best thing you can do to get at their true intentions. And the questions are, there's 2 or 3 key questions. That's the first one. Tell me about the last time that you did X, right? That's number 1. Usually when they talk about that, they'll say something like, well, if it only did this, that would help me. And you'd be like, okay. And you could say, well, if you had that thing, what would it let you do, right? That's the second question, right? First question, second question. And then they tell you what it would let you do. And then the third question, after they tell you what it would let them do, you say, well, what happens now? And like, oh, right now it's really broken. I have to hack my way through it, right? So really trying to kind of work them through a story that lets you know what they're trying to do, what they wished it would do, and what's happening now that's getting in their way and how they get around it. So those conversations are invaluable. Cool. What's the next one? How would you encourage your colleagues to embrace the responsibility they have on the product? I would, if it was me, I would tie their compensation to it. if I had that capability, I would make sure that the kind of extreme edge cases that I showed you in the presentation today never happen, right? And it would be tied to their incentives. Beyond that, talking to customers or getting them to talk to customers who have been the victim's a strong word in most cases, but the victims of dark patterns that are already in your tool, and listen to them tell their story. Again, I'll kind of come back to that auto subscribe checkbox story. I listen to so many Ladders customers tell me how they were just trying to unsubscribe and they can't figure it out. And it's really frustrating because every month, $25, $25, and they'd like to get that money back, right? Hearing that kind of anguish and that complaining is motivation for most people. An out-of-scope question. How do you keep learning in general? How do you become up to date and knowledgeable about a certain knowledge field? How to become unique and different in your field? I'm really glad you asked that. I wrote a whole book about that. Here it is. This is the, not out of scope at all. Actually, this is the first copy of the book. It's just a test copy so far. But this is, there's a big chunk in there about continuous learning. So thank you for asking. How do I do it? I do it by engaging thoughtfully in a community, in the communities that I'm interested in. So engaging with other practitioners. I create the community that I want to have. So, sorry, I create communities of peers that I'd like to speak with. They teach me a lot. They share their material. They share their questions and their thoughts with me, and they give me feedback. I read. I don't read enough. I need to read more books. Sorry. What else? Twitter. I still find Twitter valuable, despite it mostly being a burning trash can fire of political mess. But I do find it valuable. Harvard Business Review. I read that a lot these days. That's pretty much it. I'm really sorry. What else? I don't know how much more time we have. How much more time do we have?
We have 15 minutes.
15 minutes. All right. That sounds
Okay.
good.
Question?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. I'm Ayman. How did we deal with the customers that were resistant to the agile transformation? I mean, that's showing resistance. I mean, that is forbid the customer from achieving the project on time.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's how to convince the customer to work with the agile transformation plans.
Well, they hired you. It's a good start. They're spending money on you. So I think that's a good start. Here's what I do. So what I do is I recognize that in most organizations, the kind of change that we advocate for is big and it's scary and it's risky. And so I reduce the risk by offering them essentially agile experiments, right? What's an agile experiment? Let's say you work at a company, the company's got 1,000 people that work there, or you've been hired by a company with 1,000 employees. Instead of saying, hey, listen, 1,000 people need to change the way that they work on Monday, I'm going to say, look, give me 10 people, give me 5 people. Let me have them for 8 to 12 weeks. Let me give them a framework to work with. Let me coach them along the way. Let's protect them for that 12-week cycle. And then let's make sure that the work that they do is highly transparent, and see how they do and see what they learn and share their findings, right? Let's let that small group of people for that finite amount of time be agile and train them how to do it and coach them how to do it, right? That's the experiment. So I've reduced the risk from 1,000 people forever to 10 people for 12 weeks or 8 weeks. Now, in theory, you're going to collect enough evidence during that experiment that shows that this is a better way of working, the teams are happier, they're more productive, they're more efficient, customers are getting more value, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, which you can then use to justify the request to the organization to say, okay, you gave me 10 people for 12 weeks, I'd like to keep those 10 people for another 12 weeks, and I want another 10. And assuming that that scales well, you can say, great, now I've got 20, give me 40 more. Now give me 80, now give me 500, right? So you're scaling incrementally, you're increasing the risk based on evidence. You're justifying to the organization that this is a better way of working with the facts, right? As opposed to theories and books and your opinions and that type of thing. And to me, for me, that's been the most successful process yet, because essentially you're demonstrating the process and de-risking the transformation at the same time. The trick here is to make sure that that team, that experiment team, that pilot team is transparent. Don't put them in a corner somewhere. Don't hide them in a war room. Put them in the center of the floor. Let everybody see what they're doing. Make everything they do public. Have them do demo days on a regular basis. Have them share everything that they're doing, what's working, what's not working, what's succeeding, what's failing. That's how you build trust for this process.
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, actually, it is, I guess I do believe that not everything is related to the technical or not only technical or technological things only. I mean, that maybe psychological behavior should be taken into consideration as well.
Yeah. Yeah, look, absolutely. And you have to remember, right? The people at the top, they've got a ton to lose, right? They've got high paying jobs, they've got their reputation. And if you're coming in, you're saying everything has to change. And on Monday, that's a poor approach. It's a recipe for failure.
Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Okay, we have another question, but it's a bit personal. So what does Jeff's days looks like?
Oh my God, you're looking at it. I sit in this chair for like 9 hours a day. This is it. And my office is really small. Actually, so I live in Spain. I live in Barcelona. We have a nice apartment. But the office, I'll show you. You want to see what's behind this door? It's the laundry. that's my office, right? And so the office is very small. And you're looking at my day. I sit here all day. And in these days, the good news is I don't travel. And so I like that, but I'm on Zoom calls. So it's any combination. I have clients, so I have client coaching work or client content creation. I do a lot of this stuff right now, webinars and podcasts and these types of things. And if I'm lucky, I get a couple of hours where I can listen to music and actually heads down and do some work. So every day is a little bit different. And it's some combination of client work, content creation, giving back to the community, kind of stuff like this, and marketing. I do some social media and marketing, especially with the new book. And the nice part of it is, this quarantine has a lot of downsides, and it's impacted Spain very, very strongly. We haven't had a great experience here in Spain, but the nice part of it, my kids are home. I get to see my kids every day. Their school is virtual. And so if I can stand up, I can go have lunch with my kids and my wife. And it's nice. So I don't know. I suppose it could be worse. So.
Yeah. Okay.
Let me do this.
So,
Before we're gonna wrap up shortly. There's a couple things. I'm gonna put this link in the chat again. So if you want the slides, just ping me at that site. If after the fact, sometime later today, tomorrow, next week, next month, you're like, I should ask Jeff that question, I forgot. That's my email address. Just email me and ask, and I will get back to you as soon as I can. Okay, I'm not going anywhere anytime soon. I'll be right here. So don't hesitate to reach out, say hello, ask a question. I'm always happy to hear as well.
Perfect. Okay, so I guess that's it.
Awesome. Thank you guys very much. Thanks for having me. This was fun. I hope you enjoyed it as well. I know that the presentation is a little bit of a downer sometimes, but I think it's an important conversation. I think it's important to consider our work and how it fits into the businesses that we support, and just make sure that we're doing right, especially these days. You know, the more that we can help people and make them more successful, ultimately that stuff comes back to us. So thanks so much for having me. I was thrilled to be here.
Thank you very much. Before concluding, can we have like a virtual group photo? So people, if you can be able to open your cameras, and I will get screenshot.
That's a great.
Have photo with you.
I don't think they want.
Anybody has a suitable setup to open his cameras?
There we go. Excellent. There's everybody. Oh, I was on that beach yesterday, Hesham.
Okay, let me hide.
I think that's everybody who's willing to do it.
Okay.
Oh, there we go. One more.
No,
Two
no.
more. Three more.
Yeah, everybody's wearing his t-shirt on. Okay. Nice. Let me take another picture. Or another screenshot.
Excellent.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, everybody.
My pleasure. Thanks, folks.
Thank you, Ross, for organizing.
Excellent.
Thank you very much.
Oswald, we have the recording.
Yeah, it's been syncing to Zoom. Once the processing will completed, I will upload it directly to Facebook, and I will send the newsletter, including Jeff's link for getting the presentation and link for the video, inshallah.
Yep. Awesome.
Cool. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
See you
Bye.
later. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeff, for your time. Salam alaikum.